My wife cheated on me with her boss at the charity fundraiser. Then I found out she was secretly draining our bank accounts and transferring $250, $0 to his offshore account. Now she's claiming I don't deserve any of the house or savings, and we're headed to court. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, writing it all down because I need to get it out of my head. It all started with what I thought was a typical weekend, but it turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The thing is, I caught my wife, Sarah, cheating on me with her boss, Mark, at some charity fundraiser. I mean, who cheats during a charity event, of all places? It was supposed to be a night of giving back, and instead it turned into a scene straight out of a soap opera. Sarah and I had been married for 5 years. We had a nice life, or at least I thought so. She was always the bubbly, confident type, pretty, smart, ambitious. She worked at a nonprofit and I was proud of her dedication. We had a decent house, good jobs, and a pretty comfortable life. But lately I'd noticed little things. She was more distant, canceling plans, staying late at work more often than usual. She'd come home with a fake tired smile, or sometimes she'd be unusually secretive about her phone. I brushed it off, told myself she was busy, stressed, but deep down I had this nagging feeling something was off. The night of the fundraiser, I was supposed to meet her there. I had a feeling she was hiding something, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I decided to surprise her, show up early, maybe catch her in the act if she was sneaking around. When I arrived, the place was packed, but I noticed Sarah was acting strangely. She was laughing a little too hard with a guy I didn't recognize, Mark, her boss. Mark was a slick guy, always dressed sharply, the kind of guy who oozed charm and money. I'd never liked him much, but I figured he was just a work guy. Then I saw her lean into him, whisper something that made him smile and then chuckle. They were close, too close. I saw her touch his arm briefly, and that's when my stomach clenched. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I loved, was flirting with her boss right in front of everyone. It was blatant. I felt my face flush with anger, but I kept my composure. I watched as they moved away from the crowd, heading toward the back of the venue. I didn't follow right away. I needed to process what I'd just seen. But I couldn't stay quiet. I followed them discreetly, hiding behind a pillar. What I saw next made my blood run cold. They were in a small, dimly lit room, and from what I could hear through the slightly open door, they were actually having sex. Not just a quick kiss or some innocent flirtation, full-on sex, muffled by the thin walls. I knew I shouldn't have, but I stayed frozen, watching as my wife, my partner, was getting screwed by her boss. I couldn't believe she'd do something so reckless, so stupid, so betrayally dirty. That moment hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt numb, then furious. I wanted to scream, to storm in there, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching the woman I loved betray me in the worst way possible. When they finally came out, Sarah looked disheveled but still had that fake, innocent look on her face as she rejoined the crowd. Mark smiled at her, gave her a quick pat on the back, and then they both disappeared into different directions. I waited a few minutes, trying to calm my racing mind, then I slipped out of the building and went straight home. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what the hell was happening. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything over and over, the way she touched him, the way she looked in that moment. I was devastated, but I also felt something else: betrayal, anger, and a burning need for answers. The next morning, I started digging. I knew I had to find out if there was more to this than just some one-time thing. I started checking her phone, her emails, her bank accounts. That's when I found out she had been secretly draining our bank accounts, transferring $250, $0 offshore to Mark's account. I couldn't believe it. All this time, I thought we were building a future, and she was secretly stealing from us to fund her affair. How long had she been doing this? How many lies had I believed? The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was drowning. It was clear she had been lying about everything: her late nights, her excuses, her work trips. She was living a double life. And now she was claiming I didn't deserve any of the house or our savings. She said I was just a naive idiot who couldn't see what was right in front of him. That's when I realized I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to fight back. But I also knew I needed a plan, something calculated, something that would hit her where it hurt. I wasn't just going to leave her, not without making her pay for what she did. I've been thinking about revenge ever since. I want her to feel what I felt, humiliated, betrayed, powerless. But I also want justice. I want her to understand that her actions have consequences. That's why I'm here, sharing this. To get it all out and maybe get some advice on what to do next. Because I swear she's not going to walk all over me. Not after this. After I uncovered everything, the affair, the theft, the lies, I felt like my world was shattering. It was a slow, agonizing realization that the woman I loved, trusted, and built a life with had been secretly stabbing me in the back for months. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the bank statements on my laptop, feeling numb. The amount was staggering, $250, zero gone, transferred to some offshore account in Mark's name. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the cold, calculated theft that cut even deeper. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this? How did I miss all the signs? I started going through her phone, her emails, anything I could find. It was like peeling back layers of a lie. I found encrypted messages, secret emails, and even texts she'd hidden in deleted folders. She'd been planning this for a while, I think. The way she'd carefully cover her tracks, the way she'd lie about her whereabouts, all of it added up. Every late night, every excuse about working late or volunteering extra hours was just part of the cover-up. All the while, she was funneling money offshore, probably to fund her affair with Mark, or maybe just to cover her tracks. Honestly, I felt sick. Betrayed, furious, broken. I'd always thought we had a good thing. Sure, every relationship has its problems, but I never imagined she'd be capable of something this malicious. The money was a punch to the gut, but the affair, knowing she'd been lying to my face, was even worse. It was like a knife twisting every time I thought about her in that room with Mark, having sex while I was at home, clueless. I kept replaying that image in my head over and over. It was agony. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I started gathering evidence, making notes, planning my next move. I couldn't just accuse her blindly. I needed facts, proof. So I set up a little wiretap on her phone, checked her bank accounts daily, and kept an eye on her activities. I also hired a private investigator to confirm what I already suspected, that she was in deeper with Mark than I thought. Turns out, she'd been seeing him for months, not just at the fundraiser. They'd been sneaking around, meeting in hotels, exchanging money, even talking about leaving everything behind. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of hatred and sadness. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could turn into this. Was I blind? Was I just too trusting? I remember feeling so stupid for not noticing the signs earlier. She was bitchy, manipulative, and so good at hiding her true self. She'd always been good at lying, but now I saw her for what she was, a liar who would do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying her own marriage. The more I found out, the more I realized I needed to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with draining our savings and running off with Mark. I also knew that I couldn't stay quiet forever. If I wanted any chance at justice, I had to be smart about it. I started drafting a plan to confront her, but I also knew I had to prepare for the worst. She was a manipulative woman, and I wasn't sure how she'd react when I finally laid everything out. Would she break down? Would she lie even more? Or would she try to turn the tables on me? I also started thinking about the legal side. I needed to protect what was left, our house, the remaining savings, everything. I began looking into divorce laws, asset protection, and what evidence I'd need to prove her financial misconduct. It was overwhelming, but I knew I had to get my act together. The betrayal had shattered my trust, but I couldn't let her take everything. Not without a fight. By now, I was angry enough to do anything. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me, every lie, every betrayal, every dollar she stole. I decided I'd make her regret ever crossing me. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure she paid for her treachery. I spent nights awake, planning, strategizing. I knew I'd have to confront her soon, but I also knew I had to be careful. Sarah was a master manipulator, and I had to catch her off guard, make her realize I wasn't some naive husband anymore. This whole ordeal has changed me. I used to trust blindly, believe in the good in people. Now I see the world differently. Trust is gone, replaced by a burning desire for justice and revenge. If she thinks she can screw me over and walk away, she's got another thing coming. I'll fight her in court, expose her lies, and take back what's mine, because she's not going to get away with this without consequences. And honestly, I don't know how I'll ever look at her the same way again. The days that followed were a blur of planning and emotional chaos. I knew I had to confront Sarah, but I also knew I couldn't do it without a solid plan. I started to gather everything I could: screenshots of her bank transfers, copies of emails, her secret texts with Mark, even the hotel receipts from their clandestine meetings. Every piece of evidence was like a brick in a wall I was building to hold her accountable. I also made sure to keep my own emotions in check, because I knew if I let anger take over, I'd lose control. One night I sat her down in the living room. She was acting normal, smiling, acting like everything was fine. That fake, bitchy smile of hers. I looked at her and realized how much I'd been blind. I'd always thought she was ambitious, confident, maybe a little manipulative, but I never thought she'd completely throw everything away for some affair and a pile of stolen money. I felt a deep, burning rage that threatened to explode, but I kept my voice calm and steady. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the offshore account, the money she'd stolen. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started to lie, of course. She told me I was overreacting, that I didn't understand how stressful her job was, how Mark was just a mentor and that I was just jealous, that I was paranoid, that I was making everything up in my head. She threw out all these excuses, trying to paint herself as the victim, but I wasn't buying it. I saw right through her lies. I told her I had proof, and if she didn't come clean, I was going to take her to court, take everything she tried to steal from me, and make sure she paid for her betrayal. Her reaction? She got bitchy, of course. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, insecure, jealous. Said I was just a boring, clueless husband who couldn't see how successful and desirable she still was. She told me I didn't deserve the house, the savings, nothing. That I was just a naive fool who had no idea what was really going on. That her affair was just sex, the harmless kind, she claimed, and that I was making a huge deal out of nothing. But I knew better. I knew she was lying, and I knew she was trying to manipulate me into backing down. That night, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disgust. The woman I married was gone. The woman I thought I knew was a liar, a thief, and a cheat. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting. I thought about all the times she'd told me she loved me, how she'd pretend everything was perfect. But behind that smile was a woman willing to ruin everything we had for her own selfish pleasure and greed. I was furious, furious at her, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, and furious that I'd let her get away with so much for so long. I decided then that I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. I started to plan my next move: legal, financial, emotional. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset recovery. I wanted to know my rights, what I could claim, and what I needed to do to make sure I got what was legally mine. I also contacted a private investigator to see if I could find out if she had any more hidden accounts or assets. I knew she was capable of lying her way out of anything, so I had to be extra cautious. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her financials. I discovered she'd been secretly draining our accounts for months, diverting money to offshore accounts, probably to fund her affair. I found a trail of transfers and shell companies, all pointing to Mark's offshore account. I couldn't believe how cold she'd been about it, like she was just doing her job, like she didn't care about me or what she was destroying. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she'd been planning this for a long time. She'd been living a double life, and I was just the fool who didn't see it. I also started to prepare emotionally. I knew I had to be strong because this was going to get ugly. I was ready to fight for everything: our house, our savings, my dignity. I knew she'd try to lie her way out of it, try to manipulate the court, try to make me look like the bad guy. But I was determined not to let her get away with it. I wanted her to know that I wasn't some naive fool anymore, that I was capable of fighting back and exposing her lies. And so, I waited. I waited for the right moment to confront her again, to tell her I had all the proof I needed. I knew she'd try to deny everything, to spin her web of lies, but I was ready. I had everything documented, everything in order. The shock and betrayal still haunted me, but I was also filled with a quiet resolve. I was going to take everything she stole, fight for my rights, and make sure she faced the consequences. Because at the end of the day, someone has to pay for this kind of betrayal. And I was done being the fool. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I had everything lined up: proof of her affair, the offshore transfers, the secret emails, and I was just waiting for the right moment. I knew I couldn't do this by email or over the phone. She needed to see me face to face when I dropped the bomb. I wanted her to see the anger in my eyes, the determination that I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. One evening, I told her I wanted to talk. She was her usual bitchy self, acting all innocent, trying to act like she had no idea what I was talking about. She kept insisting she was just stressed, that her work was demanding, that Mark was just a mentor, and that I was overreacting. She threw in the usual lines: "You don't trust me. You're just jealous. You're crazy." But I didn't buy any of it. I pulled out my phone, showed her the bank statements, the encrypted emails, the hotel receipts, and the transfer records. I laid it all out on the table. Her face twisted into a mask of fury and denial. She started shouting, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her, trying to control her. She said I was just insecure, that she deserved better than a jealous husband who didn't trust her. She even tried to turn it around, saying I was the one cheating on her, that I was just projecting my insecurities onto her. That was her go-to move: lying, deflecting, pretending everything was fine. I could see through her bullshit. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the lies. I told her she was a thief, a liar, and an adulteress. I told her I was done playing her game. I said I was going to take her to court, get a divorce, and take everything she'd stolen from me. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might crack. But then she just sneered and said, "You're not getting anything. You're just a naive idiot who can't see how much I've done for us. I deserve better than you." That bitchy attitude of hers made my blood boil. I saw her for what she truly was: a manipulative, selfish woman who cared only about herself and her stupid affair. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, but also a strange clarity. I realized that I'd been a fool for so long, trusting her blindly. Now, I saw her as she really was: a liar, a thief, a cheat. And I knew I had to get out of this mess, no matter how painful it was. I told her I was done talking. I pulled out my phone and showed her the final piece of evidence: the offshore transfer record, the one that proved she'd been secretly draining our savings to fund her affair. I told her that I was going to consult a lawyer, that I was filing for divorce, and that she wasn't going to get away with this. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, trying to act like she still had the upper hand, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew I wasn't bluffing. From that moment on, everything changed. The game was on. I had the proof, the legal support, and a clear plan. I knew I had to act fast before she did anything else to cover her tracks or manipulate the situation. I contacted my lawyer the next day, started the divorce proceedings, and filed a restraining order. I wanted her out of my life, and I wanted what was rightfully mine: our house, our savings, my dignity. But even as I moved forward, I felt the weight of everything she'd done to me. The betrayal, the stolen money, the sex with Mark, all of it left scars. I felt angry, humiliated, and broken, but also relieved that I was finally taking control. I realized that I'd been living in her shadow for too long, letting her manipulate and betray me. Now I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. The aftermath was brutal. She fought me tooth and nail, trying to deny everything in court, calling me all sorts of names, claiming I was the one cheating, the one lying. She even tried to say I was abusive, which was a lie, but it was her way of trying to turn the tables. I had all the evidence, though, and I knew I could prove her guilt. The judge saw through her lies, and eventually I got full custody of the house, and the court ordered her to pay back the stolen money, plus damages for breach of trust. Looking back now, I realize how much I've grown through this hell. I learned that trust isn't something you give blindly, it's something you earn and protect. I also learned that some people are capable of unbelievable betrayal, and you have to be prepared for that. Most importantly, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your dignity and making sure justice is served. I don't regret exposing her, even if it cost me everything. In the end, I got my life back, and I'm finally starting to heal. The court proceedings were a whirlwind. Sarah did everything she could to deny, delay, and manipulate the situation, but I had all the evidence. Her lies about the affair, the offshore accounts, and the stolen money were laid out clear as day. She tried to twist her story, claiming I was crazy, that I'd fabricated everything, that I was just bitter and jealous. But the court saw through her bullshit. The emails, the bank records, the hotel receipts, they told a different story. In the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Watching her try to spin her lies, I realized how much she'd underestimated me. I'd never been the confrontational type, but this experience changed that. I was angry enough to tear her apart with words if I had to, but I kept my composure, knowing that the truth was on my side. When the judge finally ruled, it was a victory, full custody of the house. The court ordered her to pay back every penny she stole, plus damages for breach of trust. The moment the judge announced the decision, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. I looked over at Sarah, her face twisted in fury and disbelief. She had tried everything to save her lies, her reputation, her money, but it was all for nothing. The court had spoken. She was ordered to pay what she owed, and I was awarded the house. I finally felt like I was getting some justice, though I knew the emotional scars wouldn't heal overnight. After the court case, I moved out of the house. It was a strange feeling, walking away from everything I'd known, our home, our life, the woman I'd loved. I sold the house, took what I could salvage, and started over. The money she'd stolen was a bitter reminder of her betrayal, but I was determined to rebuild my life from scratch. I found a small apartment, got a new job, and slowly began to piece myself back together. It wasn't easy, and there were nights I'd lie awake, haunted by what she did, by the sex with Mark, and by the stolen money. The emotional toll was immense. I went from feeling humiliated and betrayed to angry and vengeful. I couldn't believe she'd been so manipulative, so ruthless. The woman I thought I knew had been hiding a completely different person behind that bitchy smile. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her get away with so much. But deep down, I knew I couldn't change the past. All I could do now was move forward, learn from my mistakes, and guard myself better in the future. I also learned that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your dignity and making your voice heard. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, and that she couldn't just walk away from her betrayal unscathed. I think I achieved that. The court's decision was a clear message. Betrayal and theft don't go unpunished. And even though I still feel the pain, I know I'm stronger now, more cautious and more aware of who I can trust. Looking back, I realize that going through this ordeal has changed me profoundly. I used to believe in unconditional trust and the idea that love could conquer all. But now I see that some people are capable of incredible deceit, and you have to be prepared to fight for yourself. I lost a lot, my marriage, my sense of security, my trust, but I gained clarity. I learned that sometimes the only way to truly move on is to confront the truth, fight for what's right, and never let someone else's betrayal define you. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding my life and healing. I know I'll carry the scars of this experience forever, but I also know I'm resilient. I want others to learn from my story. Don't ignore the signs, protect your assets, and never underestimate the destructive power of betrayal. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, sometimes painfully, and you have to be ready to face it head on. I don't regret exposing her. If anything, I'm grateful that I finally took control and refused to let her destroy me without consequences. Now, after everything settled legally and I've moved on to rebuilding my life, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what I've been through. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully recover from the betrayal, but I've learned some hard lessons. The biggest one is that trust isn't something you give blindly. I used to believe in the fairy tale version of marriage, love, loyalty, honesty. Turns out, Some people are just masters of deception, and you have to be smarter, more cautious, more guarded. I also realize that revenge isn't just about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your power, your dignity, your peace of mind. I didn't do it for her to suffer. I did it for myself, to prove that I'm not just some naive fool who can be easily manipulated, that I'm capable of standing up, fighting back, and taking control of my life again. And honestly, that made me stronger. It's given me a new perspective, one where I value myself more, where I understand that my worth isn't tied to someone who would betray me so callously. The process was brutal, and I won't pretend I'm completely healed. There are still nights when I feel the sting of betrayal, when I think about how she lied, cheated, and stole from me. But I've learned to accept that some scars are permanent. They remind me of what I've survived, and they make me more cautious about who I trust in the future. I've also become more aware of the importance of financial independence and safeguarding my assets. Never again will I be so blind to the warning signs. To anyone going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the small red flags. Keep your financial and emotional boundaries tight. And if you discover betrayal, don't be afraid to fight for yourself. It's not easy and it hurts like hell, but in the end, you come out stronger. You learn who your real friends are, what your limits are, and what you're truly capable of. I've come to accept that some relationships are beyond saving once trust is broken, and that's okay. Sometimes the best thing you can do is cut your losses, gather the evidence, and walk away with your head held high. Because real strength isn't about staying in a relationship that's toxic or built on lies. It's about knowing your worth and having the courage to stand up and take back your life, even when it feels like everything's falling apart. So here I am, finally at a point where I can breathe again. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define me, how I react to it does. I've learned that justice may be slow, but it's always worth fighting for. And most importantly, I've learned that I am stronger than I ever thought I was. Trust is fragile, but resilience is even stronger. And I refuse to let someone else's betrayal destroy what's left of me. I'm building a new chapter now, one where I put myself first, where I'm more cautious but also more hopeful. Because even after the worst betrayal, life goes on. And so will I.